The media is constantly highlighting the mass immigration to Australia in the recent past.
It's taken more immigrants in 1 year than we've ever done before, and it's really hurting Australians.
We are in the grip of a rental and homeless crisis.
But did you know in the year 22-23, while 120,000 people became permanent residents in Australia, 22,000 permanent residents have left the country, the highest in the recent past. And we are one of them. Having lived in Australia for over 15 years, we decided to leave as well. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons as to why so many people are leaving this lucky country. So watch till the very end, because you might be surprised as to how Australia is losing out on some amazing talent to other countries. So let's get into it.
If you're new to this channel, we are Nabeel and Zenesta, and we are a location-independent family with the simple goal of creating a freedom-based online business while we slow travel the world.
The great Australian dream has always been about home ownership, a house with a big plot of land in the suburbs of Australia.
But house prices in major cities have quadrupled since 1971 and doubled from under $500,000 in 2011 to nearly a whopping $1 million in 2024.
Thus making it extremely difficult for young people to actually pursue home ownership, while there is a massive rental shortages and an increase in rental prices that is just making the situation much worse.
In our case, we obviously couldn't afford a house in the city center, so we had to buy a property 50 kilometers away from the CBD. And this seems totally normal. However, along with ownership of property comes all the other expenses like council bills, water bills, utility bills like gas and electricity.
For our generation, a lot of people think that, we have horrible spending habits, which to an extent might be a little bit true when it comes to our avocado and toast. But in saying that, we cannot take away from the fact that our previous generation, say baby boomers, were spending roughly 14% of their household income on their mortgages, while millennials are paying close to 24%.
Now, Sydney and Melbourne are the cities where 40% of the total population of Australia lives. Now, this is one of the most livable cities in the world. However, it's one of the most unaffordable cities too.
Now, good thing about Australia is it has one of the highest salaries in the world, but the problem is because the expenses are so high, you actually end up with very limited disposable income for yourself. So just to give you an example, cost of essentials such as groceries, utilities, and basic services have steadily increased, with grocery costs rising 9% annually since 2022. And in the year to December 2023 quarter, living costs increased by 4 to 7% depending on household type. Employee household experienced the largest increase at 6.9%. In the year to June 2024, annual inflation was almost 4%. Now, we recently did a video showcasing our expenses in Australia versus in Southeast Asia. We'll link it for you over here if you do want to have a look at it after this video.
And honestly, you will be surprised after watching this video, so I highly recommend you to go and watch it.
Australia is almost a welfare country, so you would get some things back such as healthcare and education for your kids or even yourself, but even that is sort of shrinking recently. If you look at your day-to-day life, it's very hard to sort of say, okay, where is my tax money going to?
Now, both of us were 6-figure earners and we had to pay almost 50% of taxes, and it really pinched a lot.
I mean, at some point in time, you sort of feel like, okay, we're giving so much in terms of taxes, but how is it actually impacting us for the better? How is it improving our lives, such as better public transportation, better roads network, etc.? We just felt like we weren't seeing the returns back to us. It just was more like giving and not really receiving as much.
Australia faces challenges like stagnant wages. Real wages in Australia are 4.8% lower than pre-pandemic levels, while real wages in the OECD have increased by an average of 1.5%.
We keep on hearing about how Australia has one of the highest salaries in the world, and while it might be true, it is sort of in friction with the sort of stagnant wages that has been happening over the past few years. Now, one of the problems with that is, say you end up earning a lot of money, it sort of gives you this sense fake sense of accomplishment, and it sort of feels like, oh, you know what, I'm actually doing pretty well. So you do become a little bit complacent as well, and that ends up you actually living a pretty autopilot life. The other thing we would like to say is that, Australia has a lack of innovation, and that is primarily, in our opinion, due to the fact that Australia has a lot of natural resources such as coal. And because they're sort of gifted with these natural resources, you don't really need to, sort of think about, okay, what should I do in terms of becoming smarter, like say Singapore, who doesn't have a lot of natural resources, as to what we can do to improve that. And hence you would see that, the corporate sector is also not growing as much. People who have a lot of ambition and quite driven, they end up finding themselves in a position where they do not feel like there's any other option than actually going overseas for better opportunities. And the same thing applies to a lot of people who work in the education field, especially research. Like, I've known multiple friends who've actually left Australia simply because they didn't feel they didn't have a lot of opportunities in their field.
And we've also have friends who have reached the peak of their corporate growth, and then there's nothing much. There are no other opportunities further than that, but then they do want to grow more, and as a result, obviously, they've moved to another location where they provide much more better opportunities.
Yeah, in the process, Australia just keeps losing on a lot of talented people, and it's definitely not going to be something that's good for this country in the long run.
Australia as a country is huge, which makes traveling very time-consuming and very expensive. I have friends who lives in other cities here in Australia, and flying there domestically really burns my wallet a lot, and it's pretty expensive.
And when you even talk about public transportation, it's pretty good in the central business districts and sort of the inner cities, but as you actually go further out, which is where people are actually moving out to because it's relatively more affordable to actually purchase property there, the infrastructure hasn't kept up with the population growth, so you don't really actually find a lot of options for people unless they have to spend a lot of time on the road.
And honestly, after traveling Southeast Asia for 1.5 years, this pointed to us like a sore thumb, because the facilities that we saw all over Southeast Asia is unmatched. Like, for many instances, we thought that Australia was very backwards.
And the last thing we'd like to talk about is social isolation. I know a lot of people don't want to address this point, but it is actually a truth. We know so many people who've actually reached out to us as part of our YouTube journey. The fact that they feel quite isolated in Australia. I think assimilation, as much as locals want it, it's not easy to do because it's a two-way street, and that puts a lot of people in a position where they're sort of like in their own bubbles, and that impacts their quality of life as well. And this is another reason why a lot of people, especially immigrants, who felt that actually, I would want to actually go to another country or a country of my origin, because you feel a lot less social isolation.
So there you have it. Those are the 5 major reasons why people are starting to leave Australia. Now, you may agree with some points, you may not agree with some of them.
But with these realities that we face ourselves in Australia, instead of trying to fix some of these things which are out of our controls, how about we actually look at a new dream which is more in our control? And that is exactly what we did, is we used the concept of currency hacking to create a runway for us where we have the time and the energy to both of us focus on creating a freedom-based business, which will ultimately lead to a lot more freedom of time, location, and money for us. So we did a video around how currency hacking works and what we did around it. So we'll link it for you over here. Go and watch that right now. In the meantime, definitely do subscribe to our channel and support us while we continue to create more content like this. That's it from us. See you in the next video. Bye.
Bye-bye.